that maybe takes out players for their career and never come back. Maybe they come back, but they're never, at that all-star, all-NBA level again. And this guy does that after that like crazy injury there for Team USA, which is, I sort of forgotten about that, right? It's like in the middle of his career, it's like he's gone for a year. You just can't play basketball. And to come back and still be, a real basketball player, even if he's polarizing to some. Yeah. I mean, I just really want to get the Clippers-Lakers series that we didn't get. We didn't get in the bubble. That's fine. I'm a huge Nuggets fan. It was happy to see them come back, of course. That was a great series. But you just want to see Kawhi versus LeBron first off, and you want to see the play. Am I crazy for thinking that, Jacob?
No, I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I know you flipped the question to me, but like if we are gonna go in on the understanding that the Lakers are the team to beat in the West, how would you rank, I guess, 2 through 7? Because you've got like Dallas and Portland, which are kind of a tier below these other teams we've been talking about. But I think that's clearly the class of like the top 7. So I'd be curious, who do you get? And we'll frame it for probability to win the championship, not to finish in the standings. Like, who do you guys think is do you think it is the Clippers at that point as the second most likely to come out?
I still do. I still think the Clippers have the best chance after the Lakers to win the title. Now, a bunch of this is like matchup based too, right? It's like you might be like the Blazers are going to play well against this one team, struggle against this team, and that happens, of course, in the playoffs. That's why it's tough. Like we had a debate the other. If the Suns were playing, let's say, Mavericks or Blazers in a first round series, like, are a lot of people going to be taking like, betting on Lillard and Luka to win that series? People are sort of sleeping on the Suns, as we talked about. Even though they got Chris Paul, obviously, up there. Jay Crowder's been great for them. It's like I feel like a lot of people would pick the Blazers or Mavs in a series like that. And I'm not sure that's right. I want to make that clear. But I don't know. I guess I'm struggling, Trey. I think I have Clippers. And then I probably have the Jazz. And then it gets really, really – it's a log jam between, your Nuggets and your Blazers and your Mavericks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would take the Suns over for sure the Mavericks. That's that one I think the Suns have an advantage, but you can obviously make an argument what happens if Luka goes crazy for a week and a half. Yeah. We saw him hit a game winner in the playoffs last year. Obviously, he can elevate his game. Whereas we haven't seen the Suns actually do it in the playoffs yet. There's still going to be questions. They've got a few young guys in their rotation that we don't know what's going to happen. The number 2 team for me, though, is the Nuggets. I think they've just been incredible since they added Aaron Gordon. Michael Porter Jr. has really taken the next step, and we've seen what Murray does when he's put in a playoff situation and told, we need you to score a whole bunch of baskets. We need you to make a lot of plays for our team. You can't just sit back and play off of Jokic and let the game come to you. Sometimes you got to take over, and he's certainly capable. And then Jokic is just incredible. He has a rare quality where he's a big guy who can kind of get his own shot, and you can still get him the ball really easily. It's a lot like Dirk Nowitzki in that, where he's always going to be able to get a shot, and he's pretty money from wherever it is. He's having a special season right now, and he's really enjoyable to watch play. He got certainly upset yesterday against the Celtics, not getting any foul calls, getting pretty peeved with the referees during that crazy run. But all things considered, I think the Nuggets have been developing chemistry all year long, and Jokic looks the best he ever has.
If the Nuggets go to the title, let's say, like they make a crazy run here, let's say they win the title, you can definitely then find Aaron Gordon's name on all those lists that are like key contributors that were traded at the deadline that went on to like have success and like help with that, like Rasheed Wallace, right?
Totally.
It was a perfect example. It's probably the number 1 example of a team that made a move at the deadline and then it went on to have like immediate success and was an incredible player for that team, as we talked to Rip Hamilton about. But yeah, you're right. I'm happy with that. And Jake, I don't know if you caught the note on pod. I had been calling for that Nuggets Magic trade for a long time. I had crafted the actual trade. I said, here are the pieces that they need to send. And it was pretty close to what I was throwing out there. So I'm happy to see that Aaron Gordon is what I thought he would be in that role, like replacing Jeremy Grant a little bit and then playing off of Jokic. I mean, there are a handful of guys that it's like, we talked with Channing about this with like LeBron and Nash. And I'm not saying Jokic is like on LeBron's level yet, or like even Nash's 2-time MVP level yet, but he's on the level of like, he just makes players better because he's that good of a passer and he's that unselfish and he's that smart, like LeBron and Steve Nash were. It's like he's going to get a lot of guys paid a lot of money because he just elevates your game. So he's similar to those legends in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and Jokic has the track record in the playoffs. He's proven that he can step up to it. And I think one thing that might get there's a little bit of a market inefficiency, I would say, around just general size, right? Like between Jokic, Gordon, Porter, those are big dudes. And it's tough in the playoffs to go 7 straight games against such big bodies. And I think like we're going to have other teams that I'm trying to think of, like, obviously Dallas, right? They're primarily guard oriented, and I think like they got Josh Richardson to kind of be their 3-and-D guy, but he's best defending point guard. So it's a lot on Dorian Finney-Smith, and I think Denver is certainly in a tier above that. I like what Phoenix has done. I hated the Jalen Smith pick because Halliburton was in plain sight. It seemed like they, the past 2 drafts I know they didn't draft McCall, but they traded for Bridges, and then they drafted Cam Johnson on a hunch that they saw something that other teams didn't. And it seemed like they had really kind of figured out the recipe of, if I can draft a player that doesn't need the ball in their hands to be effective, is a great shooter, and defends at a really high level on the other end, that's a great recipe. And then they had Halliburton and Vassell on the board, and they went with a guy that, didn't really, he was kind of a B plus at a bunch of things in college. And that was a missed opportunity because even still, I think Phoenix, the big glaring hole in their team is who's their backup center in the playoffs. And that's, in theory, the Ed Davises of the world, not no disrespect to Ed Davis, sure, but he could kind of fill that role on a veteran minimum. So I didn't love that pick, and I still kind of feel like they missed an opportunity. But yeah, going back to the Denver point, like I just think they're big, and the only other team that has quite that size is the Lakers. And I guess if you put Marcus Morris in the conversation, then the Clippers have a bunch of versatile big dudes. But I'll be curious to see what happens in the playoffs.
Oh, I can't wait. I love playoff basketball. I can't wait for the play-in tournament too. And one of your teams, I want to congratulate you, Jacob, on showing so much restraint here on today's live stream, waiting a good couple hours in here to talk about the New York Knicks. Like, you haven't really you tried sneaking in a Knicks player name or two, but what a weekend for your New York Knicks, and back to 500 and currently in the 7th seed. You would be in the play-in tournament. You'd have to just win the one time to then get in. So you got to be riding high right now.
It's exciting. I'm not tricking myself into thinking they're any more than a tough out in the first round. But what I've liked the most about the past couple months, and Skeets, I know you'll like to hear this, it's RJ Barrett. He's shooting 45% from 3 since January 1st. He's turned himself into a very reliable spot-up shooter. I think going into the season, my comp for him in a best case was kind of like Tyreke Evans, that maybe he could put up 25 and 5 and, need the ball in his hands to succeed. And now I kind of see a player that Tibbs obviously was, he rode for a lot of years, in Luol Deng. I think that he's a good off-ball player. He can really take matters into his own hands when he needs to. I still think Julius Randle is kind of in a situation where the team is built for him in a similar way to the team was built for Isaiah Thomas with the Celtics. Obviously very different players, but that helps kind of get you into, I'm a star now, this is my team, I'm going to take the last shot. But there are a lot of guys on the Knicks, from Reggie Bullock to Alec Burks, that have just been
Alec Burks.
Like, those guys have been perpetually underrated. And I was looking at Alec Burks' stats over the weekend. Just some fun I like to have.
Sure. Hey, I watched every base set moment to look at jerseys. If you're looking at Alec Burks' stats, that's cool by me.
So
you guys are crazy, man.
So Alec Burks for years was criminally underrated on ball and off ball because he got fouled a ton, averaged over 5 fouls per 36 minutes, or free throws per 36, and shot about 40% out of spot up. And that's like the perfect recipe for your fourth or fifth guy on offense. And for years, he's been put as a sixth man kind of spark plug off the bench because he also is really good there. But he's a guy that I think the Denvers of the world, the Lakers of the world, like I don't necessarily understand why he couldn't be the fifth wheel on one of those teams, just because he is such a good spot up shooter. And fourth quarter, like we saw it this weekend, both games, he was guarding Ja Morant, and he was doing a little bit on Malachi Flynn, who Malachi Flynn had a really nice game last night. I think that Alec Burks is another example of a guy that, you know, he was drafted into Utah and kind of bounced around the league. And I don't think he's ever been taken quite as seriously as his talent suggests he should. So, yeah, I mean, I know that you didn't open the floor to Knicks talk for me to wax poetic on Alec Burks for 5 minutes. But yeah, I think that the Knicks are an interesting team. I think next year will be really cool to see what happens between the cap space and, of course, the 2 first rounders. That Dallas pick is a little juicier than we thought it would be. And this is the type of draft that, from my understanding, there's a clear top 5, and then picks like 11 through 25, you can kind of quabble with who's 11 and who's 25. So we're in a good spot for both of those.
No, I had to bring up your fantastic Knicks weekend before we wrap up our live stream here, just to remind